this is it. One of the very few solo trips I have ever done in the decade plus that I've been taking vehicles off-road and taking these trips. Going solo is a whole nother animal. You're completely on your own. It's one thing to have just a solo vehicle but with multiple people, but then to have it be just you, nobody else with you, and it's just your one vehicle, that changes things a little bit. Everything's on you at that point. You're the one who has to do the vehicle checks in the morning. You're the one who has to make sure everything's cooked. You're the one who has to make sure the navigation is happening properly so you don't get lost. So, you know, you have to be more careful with what you do, because if you were to get hurt or something were to happen, then it's just you. You know, you need to be able to do medical care on yourself and be comfortable with that. There's a lot to it. So some of the things that I might do if I had some other people with me, or if I had other vehicles with me, won't be happening on this trip. But I have a lot of confidence in myself. That doesn't mean that I think I can go out and be invincible. It's just I know what my capabilities are, and I know what my limits are, what my lines are that I shouldn't cross, and that means that I stay away from those lines. I don't push that edge. So this trip's a little bit different. It's just going to be a 4-day trip heading up into the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia and West Virginia. Hopefully the weather will cooperate with some of the things that I have in store for the trip. And if not, then plans will change and it'll be all good. But for now, just hit the road and got a few hours drive ahead of us. But that's what overlanding's all about, is getting in your vehicle, going out, exploring, and finding adventure. So, hope you guys enjoy. Packed up as far as clothing, all of my sleeping gear, you know, sleeping bag, blanket, pillow, that type of stuff. When I was getting all that packed up, I was like, you know what? Since I'm doing a solo trip, it's really all on me as far as whatever I want to do, where I want to stop, all that kind of mess. So, I was like, I'm not going to be all that far away from my mom, who lives about 2.5 hours from me. So last night I got the idea. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be that far from her. I'm only going to be like 30 minutes from her. Why not just surprise her? Yep. Little dogs are going crazy. And she's home.
Come on in.
This is my mom.
Hi, who am I talking to?
You are talking to anybody on YouTube right now.
Oh, well, I don't even have my makeup on. I've been cleaning house.
That's why I came up. I figured I'm coming this way. I might as well stop in and surprise you. So,
oh, okay.
Anyway.
You want any coffee cups?
I'm good right now.
Okay, well, because I've got a whole load of them, so I'm getting rid of.
All right, well, I'll catch you guys back on the road.
After having a wonderful visit with my mom and her husband for about an hour, it was definitely time to get back on the road. But one of the things that I wanted to make sure I did on this trip was stop by a place that I've passed by several times, but never had the opportunity to really go into, and that is a junkyard. Now, it may seem a little bit weird to do that there, but it was one of those instances where I definitely wanted to stop in because I'd seen it for years now and just never had. One of the things I've been wanting to get for the Avalanche is a new gauge cluster, specifically one out of a Cadillac Escalade. It looks better, but more importantly, it has a transmission temperature gauge which didn't come on the Chevy ones from the factory. So I made a stop in, and to my surprise, it was the biggest junkyard I've ever seen.
Alright, it's got the gauge cluster now. What year is it? It is 2005. This is what I need right here, baby. So this is the 4th Escalade I looked at in this yard, and thankfully they have it. It's got the gauge cluster. There's another one that had the full mirror assemblies, and I'm tempted to grab those as well because they have the built-in turn signals. So into the side mirrors. So I may snag those as well, I'm not sure. But I'm definitely getting that gauge cluster, so I'm a happy man.
After getting the gauge cluster from the junkyard and being thrilled with the condition of it, was a stop by Sheetz, a great place to fill up on gas and also get some good food before making the final trek out to the mountains into what would be my home for the weekend. And let me challenge you with something. When you go on these journeys, take the road less traveled. Avoid the main highways and instead, take the small 2-lane roads. The ones that aren't necessarily going to get you where you need to go fastest, but they're going to get you there the calmest. These are the roads that you get to see the real heart of our country. These roads in the middle of Virginia are ones I had never traveled before. And I have to tell you, it was great. I got to see where people earn what they have by the sweat of their brow, a sore back, and a huge heart. You also have the rare occurrences of those small little towns where, like Cheers, everybody knows each other's names. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. One other great thing about these little 2-lane roads is sometimes you stumble upon things that you don't normally find in your usual settings. Like somebody's front yard that is just full of old tractors. And for somebody that's very mechanical like me, I was fascinated and had to stop and see these old beauties. Finally, I had reached my destination, a place that I have come to love over the years. It's just north of Harrisonburg and right off of Route 33 in Virginia. It's a place that goes by a few different names, but I've always known it as Switzer Lake. This was surprisingly an incredible busy day at the lake. There were plenty of people fishing and out on boats, but that also meant every campsite had been taken. Especially my favorite one. So I set off up the trail, going a little further than what I would normally go for a campsite, but then I found one, and it turned out to not be too bad.
Well, I hadn't planned on going all the way to the top of Flagpole. I had planned on stopping and setting up camp by the lake, but most of the spots are taken. However, I just found one. It's not the most ideal spot. It's not my favorite spot, but it's a spot nonetheless. I'm backing into it right now. It's got a fire pit, and it's got room for the truck and the tent, so it'll do. So, time to set up camp.
Smitty-built Overlander rooftop tent goes up pretty easily. I'd only set it up a few times in my driveway, so this was my first time actually setting it up on a trip. And a few things I learned is that one, the ladder could probably be a little better quality. It's not terrible, but there are better ones out there that you can replace it with. And so it's something I would recommend you look into. The other thing is when you have a vehicle like an Avalanche, make sure that your fly rods can go in and out of their fittings easily. I will say the Smitty-built element ramps were a godsend to help me get the truck level to make it so I wasn't rolling around in my tent that night. And with camp set up, it was time to work on that fire pit, changing it from that to something much more usable. It took a little bit of work, and the trash definitely needed to be cleaned up. That's something you should always remember, is to tread lightly and pack out what you bring in. But the day was able to end as one always should, especially while out camping. That was with a warm fire, good food, and the hopes of more adventure waiting on the other side of the horizon.
So day 2, and it's a bit of a slow start. Didn't really sleep all that well last night. Nothing because of the tent, but just because, first night out, you get used to all the noises in the woods and everything again all over again. But I went to bed probably around 9 and woke up around 1. Couldn't fall back to sleep, so read for a little while, and then after doing that, went back to sleep probably around 3 and got up around 8. So nice lazy morning. Took some time to just make breakfast, cook some eggs up, had some bacon and some toast, and then it started to rain, so I just retreated inside the tent and read a little bit more, and then thankfully the sun has come out and I was able to get the tent dried off and pack it up, and may end up back in the same campsite tonight. I don't know, we'll kind of see how it goes, but right now the plan is to head over to the lake and do some fishing.
So that's exactly what I did. Unfortunately, the winds were pretty strong this day, and that meant that the water surface, as you can tell, was pretty choppy. And when you're having fish such as bass and trout in a small mountain lake, they tend to not like that type of surface. So I didn't catch anything. But an hour of casting your line out is better than an hour behind a desk. So I decided to head to the top of the mountain. This is known as Flagpole Run. It's a very popular trail, especially among off-roaders, but in all honesty, most of the time you can complete it in two-wheel drive. As long as you have a little bit of ground clearance, you should be just fine. Along the trail, you'll find a few different water crossings, mainly all near the bottom. But these are also great opportunities to go ahead and have a little bit of fun, provided you've walked through it and made sure that there's no major rocks in the way. And in this case, I decided, why not make a splash? And as I mentioned, ground clearance is pretty important. And in this case, my old nemesis decided to come back and haunt me. One of the things on this truck that I just cannot stand is the exhaust system. It was put on by the previous owner, and as you'll see in a minute, it is not ideal for off-roading. And the reason is because the muffler hangs incredibly low. And anytime it hits, it slips off of the pipe, which means I have to crawl under and fix it so that my truck no longer sounds like a tractor going down the trail. But thankfully, I'm one to bring tools. And in this case, it's very simple ones. A simple 9/16 socket for the exhaust clamp, my impact gun, and a ratchet strap to bring the muffler back up onto the pipe and get everything in place. It was only a 20-minute fix, so it didn't set me back too far. And the worst part was simply having to find something to put down on the ground so that I wasn't covered in mud before getting back in the truck. But with the repair complete, and once again having my truck sound the way it should, I was able to continue to the top of the mountain and enjoy its view. Upon coming back down, I discovered that my favorite campsite was open, and gladly took the opportunity to set up camp here. It's my favorite spot at Switzer Lake for two reasons. One, it's incredibly spacious. It's an area that you can easily fit 4, 5, even 6 vehicles. You have a couple of different fire pits, but on top of that, you're just a short little walk away from a running creek where you can have fresh water, and of course that wonderful sound of just running water right next to your campsite. It's a place that's incredibly calming, and it's a place that I could spend hours simply soaking in the environment and clearing my mind. The next day, I decided to venture into West Virginia. It's a place that, in this area at least, right outside the George Washington National Forest, you have rolling countryside, and all along Route 33, you're going up and down hills and around curves. It's a relaxing drive, and one that I knew I needed to take in order to reach my destination for the day, which was Spruce Knob. It's the highest point in West Virginia, and it's one that I'd been looking forward to for quite some time. I was hoping to have very clear weather, and unfortunately, that just wasn't the case. The day started with a little bit of drizzle, and it was just overcast the entire time. And once I got onto the main road heading up towards the top of Spruce Knob, I discovered that the weather really had it out for me. It was something that I hadn't expected, but it's something that turned into quite an adventure. The fog level at Spruce Knob was immense. There were moments where I had no more than 60 feet of visibility in front of me, so getting to the top took some time. But once I did, I was in for a very mysterious and eerie walk. It felt like something out of a movie, something almost Lord of the Rings-ish, if you would. But it was a good walk. My main point for coming to Spruce Knob was to hopefully see the Milky Way that night, mainly from the watchtower just coming into view. But the fog wasn't going to let that happen, as the forecast showed it was going to hang around until the next day. So I made my way back down the mountain and decided to cut my trip short just a little bit. There's nothing wrong with clearing your mind and realizing that at times it doesn't take as long as you thought it might. And I knew that having my family close by was going to be the best way to end this trip.
So this trip has been one where it's been different for me. For all the years that I've been taking trips and heading out to the mountains and going off-road and everything, it's only one other time have I ever gone by myself on a solo trip. And so this one being only the second time, it's pretty foreign to me. And it's been enlightening. It's been good for me, helped me grow. It's really helped me see that I really enjoy being around people. I enjoy having that camaraderie and that teamwork of being on a trip with others around you, and let me see just how much better I function when I have that core group around me, it's one where it's been a good trip. You know, it was a short one, and it was designed that way, just because I knew going in that a longer trip on my own might be pretty tough to bite off that much right away. But I'm glad it was a short trip, because it helped me see very quickly just how much I do enjoy having that team around me and how much better I do with it. So, will there be other solo runs along the years? I don't know. I prefer to have others with me though, and it's been good. It's been a good experience to just really see that in myself and to grow in that way, to understand just how important it is to have the team around you, and understanding that even though I can do it on my own, it's so much better when there's others with you. It's better to have others on the road, so let's travel.